The first time I saw Commander Elena Vasquez kill 37 of my finest warriors without breaking a sweat, I thought it was luck. The second time she did it while humming what humans call a lullaby, I realized we had made a terrible mistake. My name is Quithnari, third claw of the Hegemony Fleet, and I have spent the last 4 cycles watching these humans turn our galaxy-spanning empire into a cosmic joke. But this story is about one human female who made our entire military doctrine look like a child's finger painting. Sir, the human vessel has breached Sector 9, my tactical officer, Rimko announced with that peculiar tremor that had infected his voice ever since the Battle of Kepler Station. I flexed my claws against the command chair's armrests. Sector 9, the most heavily fortified position in the entire Hegemony defense grid. 17 battle stations, each the size of a small moon, 400,000 of our best soldiers. Energy shields that could withstand a supernova, and 1 human ship. How many? I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. 1 vessel, sir. Designation, Terror's Lullaby. The bridge fell silent, except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Even the normally chattering communications array seemed to hold its breath. Terror's Lullaby, the ship that had single-handedly turned the siege of Proxima into what our historians would probably call the day we learned humility the hard way. Visual, I commanded. The main screen flickered to life, and there it was. Not the massive dreadnought we expected. Not some sleek destroyer bristling with weapons. Just a medium-class cruiser, maybe 200 meters long, painted in that ridiculous blue and white pattern humans seem to favor. It looked ordinary, peaceful even, which of course made it absolutely terrifying. Sir, Rimko's voice cracked slightly. They are broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through. The speakers crackled, and then we heard it. That voice, soft, measured, with just a hint of what humans called a southern accent. No shouting, no battle cries, just conversation. Hegemony Command. This is Commander Elena Vasquez aboard Terror's Lullaby. I'm here to discuss the immediate cessation of hostilities in this sector. I'd appreciate it if you could clear your civilian traffic from the area. Things are about to get a bit messy. I stared at the screen, watching that innocuous little ship drift lazily between our defensive positions. She spoke like she was ordering lunch at one of their human restaurants. Polite, almost bored. Sir, my weapons officer, Grix Teal, whispered. Should we respond? Before I could answer, Commander Vasquez's voice came through the speakers again. Still calm, still conversational. Oh, and gentlemen, I know you are listening. Third Claw Quithnari, isn't it? We met at Rigel 7. Lovely planet, by the way. Shame about what happened to your fleet there. My blood went cold. Rigel 7, where she had turned 300 of our ships into scrap metal while apparently teaching her crew how to play something called poker. I'm going to give you exactly 10 minutes to evacuate your stations, she continued, and I swear I could hear her smiling. Not because I'm feeling particularly merciful today, but because I promised my daughter I'd be home for her birthday party. She's turning 8, and apparently, chocolate cake waits for no one. Rex Tal looked at me with all 4 of his eyes wide with confusion. Sir, is she talking about a celebration while threatening to destroy our entire defensive grid? That, I said slowly, is exactly what she's doing. The humans had this saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. Elena Vasquez had perfected the art of speaking softly while being the big stick. Sir, Battle Station Korvax Alpha is requesting permission to open fire, Rimko reported. Tell them to stand down, I ordered immediately. Sir, you heard me. Stand down. Because here's the thing about Elena Vasquez that made her so uniquely terrifying. She kept her promises. All of them. When she said she'd be home for her daughter's birthday, she meant it. When she said she'd give us 10 minutes, she meant that too. And when she said things were going to get messy, well, let's just say our janitors were about to earn their pay. Sir, Korvax Alpha reports they are not standing down. Commander Vorthkek says he's going to show these humans what real warriors can do. I closed my eyes and counted to 5 in the old tongue. Vorthkeks. Of course, The most aggressive, honor-bound, pig-headed commander in the entire fleet. The kind of warrior who thought tactical retreats were for cowards and diplomatic solutions were for the weak. In other words, exactly the type of opponent Elena Vasquez collected like trophies. "Get me a direct line to Korvax Alpha," I ordered. "Sir, they are not accepting transmissions from—" The communications array exploded in static, followed by Vorth Kex's booming voice. "This is Commander Vorth Kex of Battle Station Korvax Alpha. Human female, prepare to taste hegemony steel. For the glory of—" His transmission cut off abruptly. Not with static or interference, but with a soft click that somehow seemed more ominous than any explosion. Elena Vasquez's voice replaced his on the channel. Still calm, still conversational, but now with just a hint of something else. Something that made my scales crawl. "Commander Vorth Kex, I presume? I do appreciate enthusiasm, but I'm afraid you are about to make this more difficult than it needs to be. You see, I really do need to get home, and when I make promises to 8-year-olds about chocolate cake and pony rides, I tend to keep them." On the main screen, Terra's lullaby had begun what humans called a lazy turn. Nothing dramatic, no fancy maneuvers. Just a gentle arc that would bring its weapons to bear on Korvax Alpha. "Now," she continued, her voice taking on the tone of a patient teacher explaining something to a particularly slow student, "I'm going to count to 3. If you power down your weapons and withdraw your forces, we can all go home to our families. If not, well, I suppose Korvax Alpha will become a very expensive lesson in why it's rude to interrupt a lady when she's trying to be polite." The bridge was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeats thundering in my chest. On the tactical display, I watched Korvax Alpha's weapon systems charge to full power. Vorth Kex wasn't backing down. Of course he wasn't. Honor before sense. Glory before survival. It was the hegemony way. It was also about to become the hegemony's downfall. 1. Elena Vasquez said pleasantly. Korvax Alpha's main guns swiveled toward Terra's lullaby. 2. Energy readings spiked across our sensors as the battle station prepared to unleash enough firepower to crack a moon. 3. Oh dear. I was really hoping we could avoid this. What happened next violated several laws of physics, military tactics, and common sense. Terra's lullaby didn't dodge the incoming barrage from Korvax Alpha. It didn't raise shields or return fire or execute any of the maneuvers our tactical computers predicted. Instead, it did something so unexpected that our targeting systems simply gave up and displayed error messages. It accelerated directly into the weapon's fire. "What is she doing?" Grixtal whispered, his claws frozen over his control panel. "Something impossible," I replied, watching the human ship thread its way between energy bolts that should have vaporized it instantly. But Elena Vasquez wasn't just flying through the weapon's fire, she was dancing through it. Every turn, every roll, every seemingly random course correction was calculated to within millimeters. She moved her ship like it was an extension of her own body, flowing around destruction with the grace of a predator that knew exactly where every drop of rain in a storm would fall. And she was getting closer to Korvax Alpha with every second. Sir Rimko's voice was barely a squeak. "Terra's lullaby is on a collision course with the battle station. She's going to ram them." Grixtal asked. "No," I said, understanding flooding through me like ice water. "She's going to board them." Because that was Elena Vasquez's signature move. The thing that made her legend even among humans who were already considered legendarily insane by the rest of the galaxy. She didn't just defeat her enemies, she walked into their strongest positions, alone, and dismantled them from the inside while chatting about the weather. Terra's lullaby struck Korvax Alpha's docking bay with all the gentleness of a feather landing on water. The impact barely registered on our sensors, but somehow I knew that battle station's fate was sealed. "Open channel to all stations," I ordered. "Sir?" "Do it." The communications array crackled to life, connecting me to every battle station, every ship, every soldier in our defensive grid. "This is 3rd Claw Queth Nari," I announced. "I am ordering immediate evacuation of all personnel from Battle Station Korvax Alpha. This is not a drill. This is not a tactical withdrawal. This is me trying to save as many lives as possible before." Elena Vasquez's voice interrupted me, coming from inside Korvax Alpha. How she had already infiltrated their communications system, I had no idea. "Oh, don't worry about evacuating, Third Claw," she said cheerfully. "I'm not planning to blow anything up today. I'm just going to have a little chat with Commander Vasquez about proper manners and the importance of listening when adults are talking." In the background of her transmission, I could hear something that chilled my blood more than any battle cry or explosion ever could. The sound of hegemony warriors screaming. Not in pain or fury, but in pure primal terror. "You know," Elena continued, and I could hear the soft thud of her footsteps echoing through Korvax Alpha's corridors, "my daughter is at that age where she asks a lot of questions. Yesterday, she wanted to know why some people are rude to others. I told her that sometimes people just haven't learned proper manners yet." More screaming. The distinctive whine of energy weapons firing and missing their target. The dull thump of bodies hitting bulkheads. But then she asked me what happens to people who never learn, and you know what I told her? Silence. Even the screaming had stopped. I told her that sometimes adults have to teach other adults how to behave, and sometimes the lessons are a little intense. On our tactical display, Korvax Alpha's life signs were winking out one by one, not from explosions or energy weapons, but from something far more personal. Elena Vasquez was moving through that battle station like a force of nature, and every warrior who stood in her path simply stopped. "Sir," Rimko whispered, "should we send reinforcements?" I laughed. Actually laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. "Reinforcements? To fight Elena Vasquez? You might as well suggest we reinforce a black hole. Because that's what she was, in a way, a human-shaped singularity that consumed military formations and spit out cautionary tales. The woman who had single-handedly redefined the concept of overwhelming force by demonstrating that sometimes one person with the right attitude could be more devastating than an entire armada. Third Claw Quithnari. Elena's voice came through the speakers again. "I'm standing in Commander Vasquez's command center. Lovely place. Very martial. All those weapons displays and battle standards. I particularly like the one that says death before dishonor. It's got a certain dramatic flair." On the screen, I could see her now through Korvax Alpha's security feeds. A small figure in a simple blue uniform, standing calmly in the middle of a command center that looked like a tornado had hit it. Warriors lay unconscious around her, their weapons scattered like toys after a tantrum. And she was smiling. Not the fierce grin of a victorious warrior or the cold smirk of a calculating killer. Just the patient, slightly amused smile of someone who had finished an unpleasant but necessary chore. "Now," she said, settling into Vasquez's command chair like she owned it, "shall we discuss the terms of your withdrawal from this sector? Because I really do need to get home and my daughter gets cranky when I'm late." I stared at the screen, watching this human female casually flip through Korvax Alpha's tactical displays, while 37 of our best warriors lay groaning around her feet. 37 warriors. In less than 10 minutes. Without breaking a sweat. And she had done it all while maintaining perfect conversational tone, as if she were discussing the weather at a garden party, rather than systematically dismantling our most elite forces. "Sir," Grixtal's voice was barely audible. "What are your orders?" I looked around my bridge at the faces of officers who had fought in dozens of campaigns, who had seen the rise and fall of civilizations, who had considered themselves among the finest military minds in the galaxy. And every single one of them was looking at me with the same expression, complete and utter bewilderment. Because Elena Vasquez had just done something that our military textbook said was impossible. She had taken a single ship against our strongest position and won. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology or brilliant strategy. She had won through something far more terrifying. Absolute, unshakable confidence in her own abilities. "Sir?" Grixtal repeated. I activated the ship-wide communication system, knowing that every vessel in the fleet would hear my next words. Knowing that this moment would be remembered for generations as the day the hegemony learned that there were some battles you simply couldn't win. "All ships," I announced, my voice carrying across space to every commander in our defensive grid. "Withdraw to minimum safe distance. Do not engage the human vessel." Do not attempt rescue operations at Korvax Alpha, and for the love of the Ancient Ones, do not give Elena Vasquez any reason to think we are being rude. Because sometimes the smartest thing a warrior can do is recognize when he's been outclassed by someone who makes warfare look like an art form. And Elena Vasquez. She was Picasso with a pulse rifle. 3 hours after Elena Vasquez turned Korvax Alpha into her personal demonstration of human efficiency, I received a message that made my scales turn the color of old blood. "Sir," Rimco announced, his voice trembling like a leaf in a hurricane. "Priority 1 transmission from High Command. It's Supreme Admiral Koth Yara himself." Supreme Admiral Koth Yara. The living legend who had conquered 17 systems before I was hatched. The strategic genius who wrote half the military textbooks we still use today. The warrior poet who once held off an entire rebellion fleet with nothing but tactical brilliance and sheer bloody-minded determination. He was also, as I was about to learn, completely unprepared for Elena Vasquez. The holographic projector flickered to life and there he was, all 8 feet of battle-scarred magnificence, his ceremonial armor gleaming with the medals of 100 victories. His 4 eyes burned with the kind of intensity that had made enemy fleets surrender just from seeing his battle standard on the horizon. "Third claw, Quathnari," he growled, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Explain to me how one human female has turned our impenetrable defense grid into what appears to be her personal training exercise." I opened my mouth to respond, but Elena Vasquez's voice interrupted me. She had apparently decided to join our conversation without being invited. Because of course she— "Oh, hello there," she said pleasantly, her image materializing beside the Supreme Admiral's with the casual ease of someone dropping by for tea. "You must be the boss. I do apologize for the interruption, but I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. You have excellent acoustics in this system, by the way. Really carries the voice well." Koth Yara's expression went through several stages of confusion, outrage, and what I could only describe as existential crisis. His left eye twitched twice, which was something I had never seen before and hoped never to see again. "Human," he said slowly, his voice dropping to the tone he usually reserved for condemning war criminals, "you are addressing the Supreme Admiral of the Hegemony Fleet. You will show proper respect or what?" Elena asked, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I heard something new in her voice. Not anger, not threat, just curiosity, like a scientist observing an interesting specimen. "You will send more ships? More battle stations? More warriors who think honor matters more than going home to their families?" She leaned back in what I now realized was Commander Vorth Kex's chair, looking perfectly comfortable in the command center of a battle station she had just single-handedly conquered. "Because I have to tell you, Supreme Admiral, I'm running a bit behind schedule. My daughter's birthday party starts in 6 hours, and I still need to pick up ice cream. So if you have some grand strategy or devastating counterattack planned, I'd appreciate it if you could move things along." Koth Yara's other 3 eyes began twitching in sequence. I was witnessing the complete mental breakdown of the greatest military mind in hegemony history, and it was being caused by a human discussing frozen dairy products. You conquered Korvax Alpha for ice cream," he whispered. "Oh goodness no." Elena laughed, and the sound somehow made the bridge temperature drop by several degrees. "I conquered Korvax Alpha because your Commander Vorth Kex was rude to me. The ice cream is just a scheduling concern." She stood up and began walking through the command center, stepping casually over the unconscious forms of warriors who would normally require entire squads to subdue. "You see, Supreme Admiral, there's something about human psychology that most species don't understand. We are social creatures. We value politeness, courtesy, basic civilization. When someone is rude to us, especially when we have gone out of our way to be polite first, we tend to overreact. Koth Yara's voice cracked like breaking glass. "You call the systematic destruction of our finest warriors an overreaction?" "Oh, they are not destroyed," Elena said cheerfully, nudging one of the unconscious soldiers with her boot. "Mostly just unconscious. Well, except for the 3 who tried to use plasma grenades in an enclosed space. I'm afraid they won't be using their dominant hands for a few weeks, but that's really more of a learning experience than permanent damage." She paused at a tactical display studying our defensive positions with the casual interest of someone reviewing a restaurant menu. Now, about those other 16 battle stations you have scattered around this sector. I'm going to need you to withdraw them. All of them. She checked a small device on her wrist. Let's say 4:30. That gives me just enough time to get home, shower, and help Emma blow out her candles. Withdraw? Kothiara's voice rose to a pitch I hadn't known his vocal cords could reach. You are demanding that the hegemony withdraw from our own territory. I'm not demanding anything, Elena replied, her tone as reasonable as ever. I'm simply explaining the consequences of not withdrawing. You see, if those stations are still there in 2 hours, I will have to do something about them. And frankly, Supreme Admiral, I don't think either of us wants to see what that looks like. She turned to face the holographic display, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes that made my blood turn to ice. Not anger or hatred or the battle lust that drove most warriors. Something far more terrifying. Mathematical certainty. You know what the real difference is between humans and most other species? She asked, conversationally. Most species fight until they can't fight anymore. Humans fight until the problem is solved. We don't care about honor or glory or proving our strength. We care about going home to our families. And we will do absolutely anything, face any odds, overcome any obstacle to make sure that happens. She smiled, and it was the most frightening expression I had ever seen. The problem, Supreme Admiral, is that you are between me and my daughter's birthday party. The holographic connection flickered, and I realized that Elena had somehow taken control of our entire communications network. Her image was now being broadcast to every ship, every station, every soldier in the hegemony fleet. Millions of warriors were watching this small human female explain why their entire military doctrine was about to become obsolete. Now, I know what you are thinking, she continued, addressing not just Kothiara, but our entire forces. You are thinking that I'm just one person, one ship, one very polite, very reasonable human who surely can't take on the combined might of the hegemony's defensive grid. She walked over to a weapons locker, examining the plasma rifles with professional interest. And you know what? You are absolutely right. I can't take on your entire defensive grid. Relief flickered across Kothiara's face for exactly half a second. But I don't have to, Elena said, selecting a rifle and checking its power cell with practiced ease. Because I'm not fighting your entire defensive grid. I'm fighting 16 separate battle stations, each with their own command structure, their own tactical limitations, and their own commanders who think they are smarter than they actually are. She slung the rifle over her shoulder with the casual familiarity of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Station Korvax Beta has weak point in their reactor shielding. Takes exactly 4 shots from a standard plasma rifle if you know where to aim. Korvax Gamma's life support system has a design flaw that can be exploited with nothing more than a maintenance tool and 30 seconds of alone time. Korvax Delta's command center can be accessed through their waste disposal system, which I have to say shows a remarkable lack of imagination in your security planning. Kothiara's face had gone completely pale. How do you know our station specifications? Same way I know that you have a scar on your left shoulder from the Battle of Zurian Prime, and that you take your morning meal at exactly 0700 hours every day, and that you have a picture of your offspring on your desk that you think nobody knows about. Elena's smile widened slightly. I do my homework, Supreme Admiral. Always have. It's kept me alive through 17 major engagements, 43 minor skirmishes, and one very awkward diplomatic dinner where the Centauri ambassador tried to poison me with what he thought was an exotic delicacy. She began walking toward the docking bay where Terra's lullaby waited, her footsteps echoing through the command center with metronomic precision. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to visit each of your remaining battle stations. I'm going to have a brief, polite conversation with each commander. And if they are reasonable people who understand that sometimes the smart thing to do is step aside and let a lady go about her business, then everyone goes home happy. She paused at the doorway, turning back to face the holographic display. But if they decide to be like Commander Vorth Kex here, and confuse rudeness with strength, or stubbornness with honor, or tactical suicide with glorious battle. Her voice trailed off, but the implication hung in the air like a toxic gas. Well, she said finally, I suppose we will cross that bridge when we come to it. The connection terminated, leaving Kothiara and me staring at empty air, while the sound of Terra's Lullaby's engines echoed through the captured battle station. "Sir," Rimko whispered. "What are your orders?" I looked at the Supreme Admiral, hoping for guidance, inspiration, some brilliant strategic insight that would turn this disaster into victory. Instead, I watched the greatest military mind in hegemony history slowly lower his head into his hands. "She's going to do it," he said quietly. "She's actually going to take on 16 battle stations by herself, and she's going to win." "Sir, surely." "No." Kothiara's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "You didn't see what I saw in her eyes, Kwarthani. She's not bragging or bluffing or trying to intimidate us. She's just stating facts, like someone reading from a technical manual." He looked up at me, and for the first time in my military career, I saw fear in the Supreme Admiral's eyes. "She knows everything about our defenses. Every weakness, every flaw, every single point of failure that we thought was classified beyond the highest security levels. And she's not angry about this situation. She's not trying to prove anything or make a statement about human superiority." He stood up slowly like an old warrior feeling the weight of too many battles. "She just wants to go home to her daughter's birthday party. And she's going to kill anyone who gets in her way, not because she enjoys it, but because it's the most efficient solution to her problem." On the tactical display, Terra's Lullaby was moving toward Battle Station Korvax Beta with the same unhurried pace of someone taking an evening stroll. No fancy maneuvers. No aggressive posturing. Just steady, methodical progress toward the next item on her to-do list. "Sir," Rixtal's voice was barely audible. "Battle Station Korvax Beta is requesting permission to open fire." Kothiara and I exchanged glances. We both knew what was going to happen next. Commander Jekmore, the station's commanding officer, was even more stubborn than Vorth Kex had been. He would see Elena's approach as a challenge to his honor, his courage, his very identity as a warrior. He would fight, and he would lose. "Put me through to all stations," Kothiara ordered. "Sir?" "Do it!" The communications array crackled to life, connecting the Supreme Admiral to every battle station in our defensive grid. "This is Supreme Admiral Kothiara," he announced, his voice carrying across space to 16 different command centers, filled with warriors who were about to face the most efficient killer in human space. "I am hereby ordering the immediate evacuation of all hegemony forces from this sector." The response was instantaneous and predictable. 16 different voices, 16 different commanders, all saying essentially the same thing, that they would rather die than retreat from a single human ship. Honor before sense, glory before survival. It was the hegemony way. It was also, as we were about to learn, the hegemony's greatest weakness when facing an enemy who cared more about chocolate cake than military tradition. "Sir," Rimko reported, "Korvax Beta is powering weapons. They are targeting Terra's Lullaby." I watched Elena Vasquez's ship continue its leisurely approach, completely ignoring the massive energy cannons swiveling to track its movement. No evasive action. No defensive preparations. Just that same calm, unhurried progress toward what any sane being would recognize as certain death. Except Elena Vasquez wasn't any sane being. She was something far more dangerous. A human mother running late for her daughter's birthday party. All stations. Kothiara tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. "This is a direct order from Supreme Command. Withdraw immediately. Do not engage the human vessel. Repeat, do not." His words were drowned out by the opening barrage from Korvax Beta. Hundreds of energy bolts screamed across space toward Terra's Lullaby, enough firepower to reduce a small moon to cosmic dust, and Elena Vasquez flew through it like she was threading a needle in a gentle breeze. "Impossible," Rixtul whispered. But we were watching it happen. The human ship dancing between destruction, every movement calculated with inhuman precision, closing distance on Korvax Beta while avoiding damage that should have been mathematically unavoidable. And then, just as Terra's Lullaby reached the battle station's docking bay, Elena's voice came through the speakers one more time. "Commander Jekmore, I presume? I do hope you have better manners than your colleague on Korvax Alpha. I'm really trying to keep this professional, But I have to admit, your scheduling is making this more difficult than it needs to be. The sound of plasma fire echoed through the transmission, followed by screaming that was becoming disturbingly familiar. "Oh dear," Elena said, with mild disappointment. "I was hoping we could discuss this like civilized beings, but I suppose some people just need to learn the hard way that there's a time and place for everything, and that time is not when a mother is trying to get to her child's birthday party." More screaming, the distinctive sound of armored bodies hitting bulkheads, the whine of emergency alarms that somehow managed to sound terrified, and underneath it all, Elena Vasquez, humming something that sounded suspiciously like Happy Birthday. 15 battle stations to go, and she was just getting started. By the time Elena Vasquez reached Battle Station Korvax Echo, she had turned military conquest into something that resembled performance art. Korvax Beta had fallen in 18 minutes. Korvax Gamma lasted 12. Korvax Delta's commander had apparently learned from his predecessor's mistakes and tried to negotiate, which Elena appreciated so much that she only knocked out half his crew before accepting his surrender. "Sir," Rimko announced, his voice now carrying the shell-shocked tone of someone who had watched the impossible become routine. "Terra's lullaby is approaching Station Korvax Echo. Commander Yithrain he's requesting to speak with Elena Vasquez directly." Supreme Admiral Kuthiara looked up from where he had been staring at the tactical display for the past hour, watching red dots disappear one by one as Elena systematically dismantled our defensive grid with the methodical efficiency of someone cleaning house. "Put him through," the Admiral said quietly. The speakers crackled, and Commander Yithran's voice filled the bridge. He sounded tired, defeated, and remarkably sensible for a hegemony officer. "Commander Vasquez," he said, "this is Yithran of Battle Station Korvax Echo. I have been monitoring your progress through this sector, and I have a proposition for you." Elena's voice came through crystal clear, as calm and conversational as ever. "I'm listening, Commander. Though I do hope you will make this quick. I'm down to 4 hours and 37 minutes, and I still need to stop at the store." "I surrender," Yithran said simply. "Complete, unconditional surrender of Battle Station Korvax Echo and all personnel under my command. No resistance, no heroic last stands, no pointless gestures of defiance. Just surrender." There was a pause that seemed to stretch for eternity. "Well," Elena said finally, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "That's refreshingly practical of you, Commander. I do appreciate a man who understands the value of common sense." "I have younglings of my own," Yithrin replied quietly. "I know what it means to want to get home to your family. I also know what it means to recognize when you are completely outmatched. Wisdom is rare in military commanders," Elena observed. "I'm going to remember you, Yithran. In a good way." "Thank you, Commander." Korvax Echo is powering down all weapons and withdrawing to minimum safe distance. "Will that be acceptable?" "More than acceptable. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear." The connection closed, leaving us with the unprecedented sight of a hegemony battle station voluntarily retreating from a single human cruiser. "Sir," Riksdal whispered, 11 stations have now withdrawn or been neutralized. That leaves Korvax Prime, Korvax Omega, Korvax Terminus, Korvax Nexus." He trailed off, his scales turning the pale color of absolute dread. "Korvax Apex." I finished for him. "Korvax Apex, the crown jewel of our defensive grid. A battle station so massive it had its own gravity well, so heavily armed it could sterilize entire planets, so perfectly defended that military theorists used it as the textbook example of an impregnable fortress. It was commanded by War Marshal Zeth Korin, the most decorated warrior in hegemony history. A tactical genius who had never lost a battle, never retreated from an enemy, never shown mercy to those who opposed him. He was also, as fate would have it, Kothiara's brother. "Sir," Remco's voice was barely audible. "Incoming transmission from Korvax Apex." The holographic display flickered to life, and there he was. War Marshal Zeth Korin in all his terrifying glory, 9 feet of scarred muscle and ceremonial armor, his 6 eyes burning with the kind of fanatical intensity that had made him a legend throughout the galaxy. "Brother," he growled, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 victories. I have been watching this farce unfold across our defensive grid. This human female makes a mockery of everything we stand for, everything we have built, everything we are. Kathyara's expression was pained. Zeph, listen to me. This isn't about honor or tradition or proving our strength. This is about survival. Elena Vasquez isn't like other enemies we have faced. She's one small human on one small ship, Zeph Corin interrupted, his voice rising to a roar that made the bridge speakers crackle. And I am War Marshal of the most powerful battle station ever constructed. I will not be intimidated by some soft-skinned biped who thinks politeness is a substitute for strength. Zeph, please. No, I am taking personal command of our remaining forces. Korvax Prime, Korvax Omega, Korvax Terminus, and Korvax Nexus will form a defensive perimeter around Korvax Apex. When this human arrives, she will face the combined firepower of 5 battle stations and the finest warriors the hegemony has ever produced. The War Marshal's image leaned forward, all 6 eyes blazing with righteous fury. And I will personally tear her limb from limb and mount her head on the walls of my command center, as a reminder to the galaxy that the hegemony does not bow to anyone. The transmission ended, leaving us in stunned silence. Well, said a familiar voice from the speakers, that was unnecessarily dramatic. Elena Vasquez had been listening to the entire conversation, of course, because at this point I was beginning to suspect that she had complete control over every communication system in the sector. Supreme Admiral Kathyara, I do apologize for your brother's theatrical tendencies. I understand that family can be complicated. My own sister once declared war on me over who got the last piece of Thanksgiving pie, though I have to say she showed considerably better tactical sense than War Marshal Zeph Corin. Elena's image materialized on our holographic display, and I was struck by how utterly ordinary she looked. Medium height, brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a standard blue uniform that had seen better days. She could have been anyone's aunt or teacher or neighbor, except for her eyes. Those eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had just decided exactly how this was going to end. Now, she continued pleasantly, I'm going to give your brother one chance to reconsider his position, not because I'm feeling particularly merciful, but because I genuinely don't want to explain to my daughter why mommy was late because she had to teach some overgrown lizards about the importance of good manners. She checked her wrist device again. 3 hours and 42 minutes. Still doable, but it's going to be tight. The tactical display showed Terror's Lullaby changing course, heading directly for the cluster of battle stations that had formed around Korvax Apex, 5 of the most powerful war machines ever constructed, bristling with enough weaponry to reduce a solar system to rubble, crewed by over 2 million of our finest warriors, against one human ship. Sir, Greastel said quietly. Surely she can't, 5 stations at once. That's impossible, even for her. I looked at Supreme Admiral Kathyara, hoping he would agree, hoping he would tell us that there were limits to what even Elena Vasquez could accomplish, hoping he would assure us that this time finally the hegemony's superior numbers and firepower would prevail. Instead, he was staring at the display with the expression of someone watching his entire worldview crumble into dust. She's not going to attack them one at a time, he said slowly. She's going to hit all 5 simultaneously. Sir, that's tactically insane, mathematically impossible, completely suicidal. Kathyara laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Yes, it's all of those things. It's also exactly what Elena Vasquez is going to do, because she's realized something that none of us have. What's that, sir? She doesn't need to destroy 5 battle stations. She only needs to neutralize 1 war marshal. On the display, Terror's Lullaby had reached the outer perimeter of the defensive formation. The combined firepower of 5 battle stations opened up simultaneously, creating a wall of energy that should have vaporized anything within 1,000 kilometers. Elena flew through it like it wasn't there. Impossible, Rick's tail whispered, for what felt like the 100th time today. But we were watching it happen. The human ship weaving between destruction with movements so precise, so perfectly calculated that our targeting computers simply gave up and displayed error messages. She wasn't just avoiding the weapon's fire, she was using it. Energy bolts meant for Terra's lullaby struck other battle stations. Plasma bursts intended to destroy the human ship instead damaged our own defensive systems. In trying to kill Elena Vasquez, our forces were systematically destroying each other, and she was getting closer to Korvac's apex with every second. War Marshal. Elena's voice came through the speakers, calm and conversational despite the apocalyptic light show surrounding her ship. I'm going to give you one last chance to be reasonable about this. Power down your weapons. Withdraw your forces and we can all go home to our families. I will even put in a good word for you with High Command. Zeph Corin's response was a roar of pure rage that made the bridge speakers overload and shut down. I will take that as a no, Elena said with a sigh. Well, I suppose some people just have to learn things the hard way. Terror's lullaby struck Korvac's apex's docking bay with the same gentle precision she had used on all the other stations. But this time, something was different. This time, Elena didn't immediately begin her methodical infiltration of the station's interior. Instead, she activated the ship's external communications array and broadcast on all frequencies. Attention all hegemony personnel, she announced, her voice carrying to every ship, every station, every warrior in the sector. My name is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Terran Federation. I am the mother of an 8-year-old girl named Emma, who is having a birthday party in 3 hours and 27 minutes. The weapons fire from the other 4 battle stations gradually ceased as commanders and crews found themselves listening to this small human woman explain her situation to 2 million enemy soldiers. Now I want you all to understand something very important. I don't enjoy what I do. I don't take pleasure in violence or destruction, or proving how tough humans can be. I have a job to do, and that job sometimes requires me to fight people who would rather die than step aside and let me do it. Elena's voice carried a note of genuine sadness. But today, right now, I'm not here as a soldier or a warrior or a representative of human military might. I'm here as a mother who promised her little girl that she would be home in time for chocolate cake and birthday songs and the kind of simple happiness that makes life worth living. The tactical display showed her moving through Korvac's apex's corridors, but her progress was different this time. Slower, more deliberate, as if she was making a point rather than simply achieving an objective. War Marshal Zeph Corin has decided that his pride is more important than your lives. He has chosen to make this a battle to the death rather than simply stepping aside and letting a mother get home to her daughter. And because he has made that choice, I'm going to show you exactly what happens when someone stands between a human parent and their child. The screaming started 30 seconds later. But this time it wasn't the quick, efficient neutralization we had witnessed at the other stations. This time Elena was taking her time, making an example, demonstrating with methodical precision exactly why the rest of the galaxy had learned to fear human mothers with urgent appointments. Sir, Rimco whispered. She's broadcasting everything. Every security camera, every internal sensor. The entire fleet is watching her move through Korvac's apex, and what they were watching was a masterclass in controlled violence. Elena Vasquez moved through the battle station like a force of nature, but a deliberate one. Every action calculated not just for maximum efficiency, but for maximum psychological impact on the millions of warriors watching her work. She wasn't just defeating Zeph Corin's forces, she was teaching the entire hegemony military a lesson about the difference between human politeness and human restraint. This is what happens, she said conversationally, stepping over a squad of unconscious elite guards, when someone mistakes kindness for weakness. When someone thinks that because I ask nicely, I can't take what I need by force. She paused at a blast door that should have been impregnable, examined it for exactly 3 seconds, then did something with a small tool that made the entire barrier simply disappear. The thing about humans, she continued, walking through the molten remains of what had been our finest defensive technology, is that we really truly prefer to solve problems peacefully. We like to talk things through, find compromises, reach mutually beneficial agreements. More screaming from ahead. The distinctive sound of plasma rifles being fired and missing their targets. The dull thump of armored bodies hitting walls with considerable force. But when someone forces us to solve problems violently, We don't do it halfway. We don't leave loose ends or unfinished business. We solve the problem completely, permanently, and in such a way that everyone watching understands exactly what happens to people who create similar problems in the future. Elena reached the command center of Korvax Apex, and for the first time in this entire nightmare her voice changed. The conversational tone was replaced by something harder, something that made every warrior watching suddenly remember why their ancestors had learned to fear the dark. War Marshal Zeph Koren, she said, and even through the speakers I could feel the temperature drop. You have kept me from my daughter's birthday party. You have forced me to use violence when I offered you peace. You have wasted my time, endangered your own people, and shown a remarkable lack of basic courtesy. The blast doors to the command center exploded inward, and Elena walked through the smoking wreckage like she was entering her own living room. And now, she said, her voice carrying across space to every corner of our fleet, you are going to learn why the rest of the galaxy has learned to be very, very polite to human mothers. What happened next lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. I know this because our tactical computers recorded every moment of it, analyzing Elena's movements with the cold precision of machines that couldn't comprehend what they were witnessing. War Marshal Zeph Koren, the greatest warrior in hegemony history, lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds against a human mother who was running late for a birthday party. When it was over, when the screaming stopped and the emergency alarms fell silent, Elena's voice returned to its normal conversational tone. Well, she said, settling into the War Marshal's command chair, that was unpleasant but necessary. Now, Supreme Admiral Kathyara, I believe we have some terms to discuss. The holographic display flickered back to life, showing Elena sitting calmly in the command center of our most powerful battle station. Around her, the unconscious forms of our elite guards lay scattered like discarded toys. War Marshal Zeph Koren himself was propped against a wall, alive but clearly wishing he wasn't. I'm going to need all remaining hegemony forces to withdraw from this sector, she said pleasantly. Immediately. No delays, no tactical repositioning, no clever plans to retake lost ground. Just pack up and go home. Kathyara stared at her with the expression of someone trying to process information that his brain refused to accept. In return, Elena continued, I will make sure your brother receives proper medical attention. Your surviving personnel are treated according to galactic warfare conventions, and this entire incident gets filed under unfortunate misunderstanding rather than complete military catastrophe. She checked her wrist device one more time. 2 hours and 53 minutes. Still time to grab ice cream and maybe some party favors. Emma's been wanting one of those singing birthday cards, and there's a shop on Proxima Station that has the most adorable selection. You, Kathyara's voice was barely audible. You destroyed our entire defensive grid for a birthday party. I didn't destroy anything, Elena corrected gently. I temporarily inconvenienced some people who were being rude to me. There's a difference. She stood up, straightening her uniform with the casual efficiency of someone finishing a routine task. Besides, Supreme Admiral, your defensive grid was never really about defense, was it? It was about projecting power, showing strength, making other species think twice about challenging hegemony authority. Elena walked to the command center's main viewport, looking out at the scattered remains of what had been the most formidable military installation in known space. But here's the thing about projecting power. It only works if people believe you are actually powerful. And after today, after watching one human mother dismantle your finest warriors while worrying about whether the ice cream shop closes early on weekends, she turned back to face the holographic display, and her smile was absolutely terrifying in its casual confidence. Well, let's just say that the galaxy is going to have a very different opinion of hegemony military might. The transmission ended, leaving us in absolute silence. On the tactical display, Terror's lullaby was already moving away from Korvax Apex, heading for the edge of the system with the unhurried pace of someone who had finished their work and was ready to go home. Behind her, 5 battle stations hung dead in space. 2 million warriors sat in stunned disbelief. The entire foundation of hegemony military doctrine lay in smoking ruins, and Elena Vasquez was probably thinking about chocolate cake. Sir, Rimco whispered. What are your orders? I looked around the bridge at officers who had spent their entire careers believing in the superiority of hegemony tactics, weapons, and warriors, at professionals who had considered themselves among the finest military minds in the galaxy, at people who had just learned that sometimes the most dangerous enemy you can face is someone who has a birthday party to attend and absolutely no intention of being late. "Send word to all fleet commanders," I said finally. "Full withdrawal from this sector. No pursuit of the human vessel. No attempts at retaliation. No heroic gestures or face-saving maneuvers, sir. And send a message to High Command. Tell them that effective immediately, all hegemony forces are to treat human vessels with extreme courtesy, especially ones commanded by officers who mention having children." I settled back in my command chair, watching Terra's lullaby disappear into hyperspace with the satisfied efficiency of someone who had accomplished exactly what they set out to do. "Because," I continued quietly, "the last thing this galaxy needs is more human mothers running late for important family events." And somewhere in human space, Commander Elena Vasquez made it home just in time to help her daughter blow out 8 candles and make a wish. The hegemony never found out what Emma wished for, but we all hoped it wasn't for her mother to visit more alien military installations. We really, truly hoped.